Most budgets fail, not because people are bad with money, not because they lack discipline, and not because they don't understand basic financial math. Budgets fail because they accidentally trigger a powerful psychological reaction in the brain, a reaction that makes people want to break the rules they just created. Psychologists call this reactance, and it's the reason someone can carefully design a budget on Sunday night and completely ignore it by Thursday afternoon. Because the moment the brain feels restricted, it starts looking for ways to restore its freedom. So the real problem with most budgets isn't the numbers, it's the psychology. Today I want to explain why your brain resists budgets, how reactance theory and behavioral resistance influence spending decisions, and what actually works better if you want a financial system your brain will cooperate with instead of fight against. Let's start with a situation that's extremely common. Imagine someone earning about $82,000 per year. After taxes and deductions, maybe $5,200 reaches her account each month. She decides she's finally going to get serious about money. So she opens a budgeting app, or downloads a spreadsheet, or uses one of the templates recommended by financial influencers. The categories look responsible. Rent, $2,100. Groceries, $600. Transportation, $350. Utilities, $250. Insurance, $300. Then she reaches the categories that start to feel uncomfortable. Dining out, shopping, entertainment. Maybe she gives herself $200 for restaurants and $150 for personal purchases. On paper, it seems reasonable. The system feels organized, structured, responsible. For the first few days, everything works. She tracks purchases, she feels disciplined, she might even feel proud of herself. But then something subtle happens. Her friends invite her out for dinner, or she walks past a store she likes, or she sees a pair of shoes online that cost $95, and suddenly the budget doesn't feel like a helpful system anymore, it feels like a restriction. She starts thinking things like, I've been good all week, it's just this once, I'll adjust the budget later. So the purchase happens, then the category limit gets exceeded, and now the system feels broken. Instead of calmly adjusting the budget, she avoids opening the app for a few days, then a few weeks. Eventually, the entire budgeting system disappears. A month later, she's back where she started. This pattern happens constantly. Someone creates a strict system, follows it briefly, breaks it, then abandons it. And most people assume the problem is discipline. But behavioral research shows that often the problem is how the brain experiences restriction. To understand why this happens, we need to talk about reactance theory. Reactance theory was introduced by psychologist Jack Brem in 1966. The theory explains what happens when people feel their freedom of choice is threatened. When the brain detects that freedom is being restricted, it creates a motivational state called reactance. Reactance pushes people to restore their sense of autonomy. In simple terms, when people feel controlled, they resist. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously. You can see this reaction everywhere. Tell a child they absolutely cannot touch something. Suddenly, it becomes fascinating. Tell a teenager they cannot go somewhere. Suddenly, they want to go there even more. Tell someone they cannot spend money on something, and that purchase suddenly feels more appealing than it did 5 minutes ago. It's not always about the item itself. It's about restoring freedom. Now apply this idea to financial behavior. Traditional budgets are built around restriction. You cannot spend more than this. You must stay inside this category. You should avoid purchases outside this plan. Logically, those rules make sense, but psychologically, they trigger reactance because the brain experiences them as a loss of autonomy. There's also a neurological layer to this. When someone feels restricted, the amygdala activates. The amygdala is the brain's threat detection center. Even though a budget isn't dangerous, the brain can interpret restriction as a threat to personal freedom. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational planning and long-term thinking, temporarily loses influence. Emotions start guiding behavior instead of logic. That's why someone can understand perfectly well that saving money is important and still ignore the budget in the moment. But reactance isn't the only force happening here. Another psychological factor is loss aversion. This concept was developed by behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman. loss aversion describes how people experience losses more intensely than equivalent gains. In financial terms, losing $100 feels more emotionally painful than gaining $100 feels rewarding. Now think about how budgets are structured. Most budgets frame spending limits as losses. You cannot spend this. You have to give this up. You must stay under this number. So the brain experiences the budget not as a gain in financial stability, but as a series of small losses: loss of flexibility, loss of freedom, loss of spontaneity. Combine loss aversion with reactance, and you get a powerful behavioral reaction. The brain starts looking for ways to escape the restriction, which is why people often overspend right after starting strict financial plans. The restriction itself creates tension, and spending becomes the release. Here's the deeper insight. Your brain doesn't only want financial stability, it also wants psychological autonomy. And when a financial system threatens autonomy, the brain resists it, even if the system is logically beneficial. This is why intelligent, responsible people can still struggle with budgeting. The issue isn't knowledge, it's emotional experience. A system that feels restrictive triggers resistance. A system that preserves autonomy creates cooperation. So the goal isn't to create stricter budgets. The goal is to design financial systems that guide behavior without threatening the brain's sense of freedom. Here are 4 shifts that make budgeting dramatically easier for the brain to follow. Shift 1. Start with goals instead of limits. Most budgets begin with restrictions, but psychologically effective systems begin with goals. Instead of asking, "How much can I not spend?" ask, "What do I want my money to accomplish this year?" Maybe it's building a $20,000 emergency fund. Maybe it's investing $600 every month. Maybe it's eliminating $10,000 in debt. When money is directed toward meaningful outcomes, the brain experiences purpose rather than restriction. Purpose increases motivation. Restriction creates resistance. Shift 2. Protect a freedom category. One of the most effective ways to reduce reactance is to intentionally preserve autonomy. Create a guilt-free spending category. For example, someone earning $5,200 monthly might allocate $350 for completely unrestricted spending. No tracking, no judgment, no explanation. This small freedom protects the brain's sense of autonomy, and ironically, it often reduces impulsive spending because the brain no longer feels controlled. Shift 3. Use automation instead of discipline. Behavioral economists call this the default effect. People tend to stick with automatic systems. If saving requires a decision every month, motivation fluctuates. But if money automatically moves to savings or investments when your paycheck arrives, the system runs without emotional negotiation. Automation removes the moment where reactance usually appears. Shift 4. Reduce cognitive load. Another reason budgets fail is decision fatigue. Many budgeting systems contain too many categories: groceries, dining out, coffee, shopping, subscriptions, transportation, entertainment. Each category requires attention. Psychologists call this cognitive load. The more mental energy a system requires, the less likely people are to maintain it. Simpler systems work better. Instead of 15 categories, try 5. Housing, essentials, future wealth, lifestyle, freedom spending. When the system becomes easier to manage, consistency improves. Here's something simple you can try tonight. Look at your current budget. Find the category that feels the most restrictive, the one that creates tension every time you see it. Now redesign that category as a flexibility zone. Choose an amount that feels psychologically comfortable, not perfect, comfortable. Then observe your spending behavior over the next 30 days. Many people discover that when the brain feels less restricted, financial behavior becomes more controlled. If this video made you realize that your financial behavior is psychological, not just mathematical, that's exactly why I created the Wealth Psychology Workbook. Many women understand budgeting and investing logically, but their nervous system still reacts emotionally to money decisions. Inside the workbook, we go deeper into the psychological patterns behind spending, saving, and financial avoidance. You'll identify your personal money patterns, understand the emotional triggers behind them, and learn how to design financial systems that work with your brain instead of against it. The link is in the description. Because once you understand how your brain interacts with money, financial discipline becomes much easier.